How's it going, YouTube? It's your boy Optima back with a brand new video, and today I wanted to discuss with you all my top 5 decks that I think are currently overrated in Legends of Runeterra. This is actually going to be specific to the tournament meta as opposed to the ladder meta, and the reason being is just because at the end of the day, we play the ladder so that we could qualify for seasonals, which is a big tournament. So I just think the tournament meta is more impactful in the big picture, and also because of the fact that I feel like ladder gives you a misconception of tournament, while tournament almost never gives you a misconception of ladder. It's kind of only works in the opposite direction rather than vice versa. So I thought it could be a helpful video for anyone who's finding success with these decks on ladder and may want to bring them to a tournament, but in my opinion would be making a mistake. I've always been someone who's kept a pretty good eye on the tournament meta. Since I've been playing, it's kind of one of the ways I've tried to use that as a way to get better, using viewing others and what's going on in the tournament meta as a way to evaluate the competitive scene and then use that to my advantage. And now, because of the fact that I am a host, I'm a part of the Runeterra Life team, and we host our own tournaments. I even have more tournament insight than I had before, so I feel like I have a pretty fleshed out opinion on this topic. So I hope you guys will give me the time of the day and watch today's video on the top 5 overrated decks in the tournament meta for Legends of Runeterra. I appreciate your viewership. As always, you can support me with a like on this video, leaving a comment, as I always love hearing from you guys. Literally makes my day, and obviously you know how it also helps out. So yeah, double dip there. Would love to hear from you guys on if you agree, disagree, and why that's the case. And lastly, subscribe if you're new, as we're getting things rolling again in the year 2022, and I would love to have you on board for everything we're going to be doing on this channel. Nevertheless, let's hop right into the video on top 5 overrated decks in the Legends of Runeterra tournament meta as of right now. So overrated, pretty much what I mean by that term, because I know some people may, I don't know, take it in the wrong direction. You never know how people will define some of these kind of spicy words like overrated. Pretty much what I'm saying is that the deck can be good, but it currently is not good. Can that change by the time we get to the weekend? You honestly never know. The meta in card games actually accelerates so fast, and specifically in Legends of Runeterra accelerates so fast. It's honestly insane. So you just never know how things can really change. You never know how these decks can get like teched to be just so much better into a certain matchup that's giving them trouble. So take this obviously with a little bit of a grain of salt, just depending on how things change heading into the weekend. But we do have OLS, a very long running series hosted by Jay Doza, and that's just really well tournament series that's coming up this weekend, as well as another one of the Master Runeterra tournaments going into that big tournament that everyone's trying to qualify for. So definitely 2 really awesome hype tournaments coming up this weekend that I thought this would be a good video to get out before those, so you guys could have that extra insight heading into those. So yeah, once again, let's just hop right to it. So first off is going to be an honorable mention, actually, and not actually deck number 5. Awesome. So we're all switched over, and the honorable mention deck is going to be none other than Kinenari. And you may be looking at me like, bro, you have to be kidding me. This is the best deck in the game. Actually, this version of it is not. This is going to be the Ionia Shadow Isles deck. And while this deck is showing strong success on ladder, some people are piloting this deck to some really solid success. I do think this is, especially in the tournament meta, an inferior version of Kinenari. The reason I say this is largely because I feel like the true way that Kinenari wins a game is not through go hard. You're generally not going to win a game through getting 3 go hards casted and then going into pack your bags and trying to win that way. That's almost never going to be the way this deck wins the game, and I get that that's teched in for a better chance of like beating the mirror and other stuff like that, but nevertheless, the way the deck wins is through Ari generate, through Ari being leveled up and her using her extremely strong level up to then just attack down the line with the elusive units that probably aren't getting blocked and win the game that way. The best way to propel that win con is through the Shurima version that uses Absolver, and the best versions of that Shurima version are running 2 Absolvers now. Absolver is just such an impactful, really strong card that not only grants extra stats, which Ari loves, but also gives Overwhelm, which is really strong, and especially is really strong on Fae Blade Whirler, which is a card that gets the buffed up stats upon a unit being stunned or recalled, but just gets chump blocked so easily every single time unless you you can get Overwhelm on it, and this deck has no way of putting Overwhelm onto its units. I get what it's trying to achieve, and I think it's good at it for the ladder meta, but I not only think this deck will fall off a little on ladder, I specifically think it is not the right option in the tournament meta, and it didn't really have a great showing this past weekend in any of the tournaments that currently went down. So I would definitely maybe look at this deck with a little bit more hesitation than you maybe have previously heading into tournaments this upcoming weekend. Deck number 5 is going to be an old favorite of many, and that's going to be none other than Lee Sin Zoe. Lee Sin Zoe is a deck that's terrorized people since a very long time and really does have a lot of history to back how strong it is. Nevertheless, I feel like we finally have fallen into a spot where this deck really isn't one of the strong options. I actually did see some of the Master Runeterra tournament live that went down on Sunday, and I did even hear them, Majinbei and Jason Flurant, alluding to the fact that Lee Sin actually isn't just a auto put into your 3-deck lineup deck anymore either. And those two guys play Lee Sin a ton. It is a specialist deck for Majinbei, and pretty much they work together with the Master Runeterra team a lot on building their lineups. So Lee Sin is a deck that those two guys would know tons about, and them saying that the deck has kind of fallen off a bit would probably hold a lot of validity to that statement coming from those two. And yeah, that's definitely been the case. If you look at stats on Mobalytics, Lee Sin is extremely down as far as win rate in the master tier, and even furthermore, this deck just really isn't doing much in the tournament meta either. There's players who brought it, even specialists like Imtux, and it didn't really work out for them. So I would say, unless you are going to tech this deck, and people are trying it, there is a version of this deck using Mentor of the Stones and the card that lets you swap with another unit. I'll probably say, like, put it on the screen or something. If you're going to tech it and adding cards like that so you can maybe get around all the kill spells and stuff that are currently going around in the buffed up control decks, then maybe you could stand a chance. But if you try to run this standard version of Lee Sin, you're probably not going to be in for a good day, as it's either going to get overwhelmed by the aggro decks or just shot down from winning with Lee Sin by the control decks. So yeah, Lee Sin may finally be knocked down a peg, and honestly, personally, I'm so happy to see it. It is a beautiful day, and the sun is out, because Lee Sin is not on my mind. The number 4 deck on our top 5 overrated tournament decks in Legends of Runeterra right now is going to be none other than the very, very highly rated initially after patch 3.0 deck in Iceborne Spiders. And yeah, unfortunately, Iceborne Spiders seems to not actually be the menace that a lot of people initially made it out to be, where Iceborne Poros is a deck that I still firmly believe in as a tournament option, just because the abuse of the elusive keyword is a little too strong. And yeah, that deck just snowballs really easily too, through the cards that generate Poros, whereas I feel like the cards that generate spiders are not as strong and don't snowball as effectively if you initially remove the spiders. And even furthermore, they're not elusive units, so they can also still just be chumped block, and you can maybe still work your way back into the game after chump blocking some of those spiders and regaining a board state within the game. Overall, the deck isn't terrible, but there may need to be some teching or some reworking within the list, as this standard list is just no longer doing it. Not only has it fallen off in the ladder meta, this deck really didn't show much in tournaments this past weekend either. So unless you're going to change something with the list, I would highly recommend avoiding Iceborne Spiders as a deck within your lineups moving forward. Our third most overrated tournament deck is going to be none other than Poppy Rally. And Poppy Rally is going to be another one of those decks that did have its time in the meta, where it was absolutely a menace like Lee Sin. Not to the extent of Lee Sin, but it's had its time. Obviously, Poppy hasn't been around for that long, and Poppy has gotten touched up a few times compared to Lee, who's kind of just been chilling. But this deck has had its time of being the star of the meta, and right now though, I just don't see it as that strong of an option. Once again, there are players on ladder who are finding success with this deck, but at the end of the day, I just don't think it's as strong as it once was. I could see it getting out aggroed by some of the aggro decks running around, and also I could see it losing with Vengeance buff to 6 to those control decks as well, due to the fact that, yeah, it's a lot easier for them to bank mana and then just shoot your most impactful attacker with this deck, and then you kind of not really hit for for enough damage, and since those control decks also run healing, it's really easy for them to get back in the game. If you do a bunch of kind of wide puny attacks, they can still get back in the game, and even wide boards can get shut down like by cards like Avalanche and Blighted Ravine. And yes, you can try to use your Twin Disciplines to keep things alive, but at the end of the day, you would rather be using that a little bit more offensively to win the game as well. So Poppy, Lulu, and just Poppy rally decks in general are just decks that I would avoid. I think Lulu still has good options. I think the Lulu Ari deck is still a solid option, and there's possibly Lulu Fizz is a good option, but Poppy herself is a card I would be avoiding, as she kind of forces you into this Demacia way, and I just think these Demacia aggro decks aren't in a good place aside from the Scouts, the MF Quinn Scouts deck, since they run a little bit of a different game plan in the way they go about executing that. So yeah, Poppy rally decks I would avoid. They're just not really in that strong of a place and don't really have a great way of combating all the control tools currently in the meta, and they can definitely get aggro down themselves as well, because while they're kind of fast, they're not that fast at executing their game plan. So a deck to avoid in my opinion, and definitely a little higher on the list at number 3. My number 2 most overrated ladder tournament deck right now is going to be none other than Nightfall. And of course, Nightfall is a deck that's near and dear to me. It's actually one of the first few decks that I learned in Legends of Runeterra, and I love these two champions in Diana and Nocturne. My intro on YouTube is Nocturne, so of course I love this champion. And unfortunately, I just kind of knew that Nightfall wouldn't be better. If you watch my previous video, which you should definitely go watch, and there will be a link that pops up on the screen now. If you watch that video, 26 decks that you can try after the 3.0 patch, I did allude to the fact that Nightfall probably isn't that good of a deck, even with Diana buffed, because of the fact that Diana was never a bad unit in the deck. She was actually one of the better cards in the deck. She was great in this deck. The issue with this deck is you don't really have a good finisher. Relying on Nocturne as a finisher, relying on Moonlight Affliction as a finisher, or even relying on the 6 mana elusive, give me and another card elusive if it's Nightfall. Can't think of that card. It'll probably also put something on the screen right now. Relying on those cards as finishers, they're just not that great, especially not in the meta right now. So you find yourself in these weird scenarios where you're often relying on drawing Doom Beast in order to get that last little bit of Nexus health off of your opponent's Nexus, as just a 1 off of Unspeakable Horror generally isn't enough, but the 2 that Doom Beast provides, as well as the Drain effect, is a lot more impactful. However, though, you're going to find yourself in plenty of scenarios where Stalking Shadows does not give you that Doom Beast, and even this particular list, which is the most popular list for whatever reason that people are running, this list doesn't even have Stalking Shadows, which I think is definitely not correct, as Stalking Shadows is everything for a card like Doom Beast, because you want to have more of him than your deck is providing you, and Stalking Shadows gives you extra copies of him. Even if it's ephemeral, you don't really care. You're just using Doom Beast for his Drain effect. So absolutely, you should be using Stalking Shadows. I do not know why this is the most popular list going around on ladder right now, as yeah, this does not look great to me. And I don't know, I'm just really low on Heaven's Align too. Like, there's some bad cards in this list that you have to run just to like make this deck work. I just don't like it. And yeah, players are finding success with it. I've seen a lot of Manesia's kind of tweets showing that he's doing some things with it, but the average Nightfall player is not finding success. And a deck that did really poorly in tournaments this past weekend was Nightfall. So in my opinion, it's absolutely a deck to avoid. If you want to play Diana, play the Diana Zoe list. I think it's a lot better, and there's even like a little bit more to kind of work on. I don't even think that deck's optimized, so I would focus on that, as I just don't think Nightfall is a great option right now. And that's going to bring us to the number 1 deck that I think is the most overrated in the tournament meta right now, and that's going to be none other than Draven Rumble. And Draven Rumble is going to be a deck that once again is showing some strong prowess on ladder right now. Some players are applying this deck to some really solid success right now and doing some really solid things with it on ladder, but nevertheless, aggro strategies can sometimes overperform on ladder often, and that not translate to tournament. That's been a consistent theme throughout Legends of Runeterra, and it seems to be the case once again, as Rumble Draven was a consistent deck on O2 drop players players within the tournament meta, or 0-1 drop, since the Master Runeterra series is just single elimination. At least for right now. The championship, I think, is not single elimination, but nevertheless, this is a deck I would definitely avoid, and I've personally just never been too high on it. I did try a decent bit of Rumble. He seemed really cool to me. I love the idea. I thought it was unique. I like unique champions, but at the end of the day, I feel like this deck does not actually just throw away 3 cards in the way people think it does. And I know you're not throwing them away. Fallen Rider's supposed to be really good discard fodder. The Flame Chompers you get off of Boom Baboon is supposed to be really great discard fodder. Reborn Grenadier is supposed to be good discard fodder, and as well as Lost Soul. But I think the effectiveness of those cards are using them each and every turn, like using it with Zonite Urchin and then also drawing a card. Using it with the 2 mana card that discards a card and then draws you a unit. I feel like the effectiveness of those cards and the fact that they get discarded and then do something else, as well as playing the unit that they play. But with Rumble, they're getting discarded and playing Rumble, but there's nothing else on top of that happening as well, other than, like, yes, you're getting the keywords on Rumble, but I just don't think that payoff is high enough. You have to discard 3 to get Spell Shield, which is by far the most impactful out of Impact, Quick Attack, and then Spell Shield being the most impactful. You have to discard 3 cards, and then that makes your hand so awkward for the rest of the game moving forward, because you just got rid of all your discard fodder, and you still want to discard cards. So now you're in this awkward position because of Rumble. And it transitioned you into trying to burn the Nexus a lot quicker than I feel like these Draven decks want to transition into doing that. I think that these decks could be a little bit more effective if they start splashing in Scion again. I don't think he's as bad as people may be perceiving him after the nerfs. I still think he's a pretty alright card, and maybe that can work out for them. I don't know what exactly the real solution is here, but I think overall Rumble just really isn't that strong of a champion in the way that people want him to be. When he works, he absolutely works, but I just find that discarding 3 cards in 1 turn in the later parts of the game, if you don't have some really impactful Rumble turns off of that discard, you're going to find yourself questioning why you even did that. No, I should not have discarded 3. That wasn't effective. And that's also a thing with this deck. I feel like knowing exactly when you can afford to discard 3 cards as opposed to 2, as opposed to 1, is also a huge part of playing it effectively. And I feel like a lot of people go into playing this deck not actually considering that, and then end up obviously playing the deck incorrectly, since you can't just get rid of all of these cards in your hand in one specific turn, like 3 cards in your hand on one specific turn. I would almost rather Rumble be 5 mana and come down and add Overwhelm is one of the keywords for him. I don't know how they can go about doing that, but I don't think his current design is actually that good personally, and I could see people eventually shifting off this deck, because the only way it really works in a lineup is alongside other aggro decks. But I just don't think it's that great of an aggro deck itself when it comes to the tournament meta. Plenty of burn, so you will find yourself still winning matchups just through the strength of burn. I think burn has been a little broken in Legends of Runeterra for a while. Get Excited is just an amazing card. Mystic Shot's an amazing card. Might is an amazing card. Noxian Fervor is an amazing card. And most importantly, Decimate is amazing. I know it's 5 mana slow, but just chunking a Nexus for 4 is literally 1/5 of 20. That's 1/5 of the overall Nexus health you start the game with. So it's just so impactful. So you'll find yourself winning off of the strength of burn, but the actual strength of Rumble I don't think is coinciding with the other strengths of this deck in the way that players would want. And I could see, once again, like I said, I could see players shifting a little bit off of running this all-in Rumble list and going a little bit more into some other path that doesn't require you to just get rid of 3 cards and then ruin the rest of your tempo for a good deal of the rest of the game. As the deck after that, like, it doesn't just regenerate cards. There's no draw aside from Zonite Urchin in this deck. Yes, some players have gotten rid of Ambush due to the amount of elusives running around, but this is once again just the most popular version of the deck, so that's the reason why we're talking about it. And yeah, that is not going to be the reason why the deck is underperforming, because players brought the non-ambush version of decks to the tournament meta and still found themselves on the back end. This was an extremely consistently underperforming deck, as tons of players who did not perform too well were rocking out with this Draven Rumble list. So this would be my #1 deck to avoid. If you want to bring triple aggro, figure out something else other than Draven Rumble. It should not be the deck in your lineup. And that's going to be my top 5 list of decks of overrated decks in the Legends of Runeterra tournament meta. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of shorter form video, as it's something I want to do a lot more of, so I can actually get you guys out 3 videos per week, as that's exactly what I said I'm trying to do in 2022. Once again, your guys' support means everything to help me do that, because like I said, I can get in my head and just get down and feel like, oh, like, I guess it's not really worth it or this or that. So I would love to just have your guys' consistent support through all this, whether it's commenting, liking, support, being in Discord telling me, hey bro, you haven't got a video up. I would love all that. Feel free to do it. Links in the description to my Discord. Also, I'm plugging Runeterra Life, my tournament team. If you guys aren't aware, you should definitely check us out on Twitter. We're doing consistent tournaments and may even have weekly tournaments coming up. But yeah, you'll have to stick around and see if we get around to that. So thank you for your time. As always, everyone, love you, appreciate you. Couldn't do this without you. I'll see you guys in the next episode, or the next video. Next video. This is Optima signing out. Peace.